are streaming on YouTube, and we are ready when you are.
Okay. I'll call this meeting to order. It's a meeting of the Seward City Council. This is Monday, August 26, 2024. It's 7 p.m. And Chief, would you please lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Roll call for tonight's meeting. Calhoun?
Here.
Barnwell?
Here.
Wells?
Here.
Kreitz?
Here.
Finch?
Here.
Osenga?
Here.
And Mayor McClure.
Here.
Okay, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. We're now to citizen comments on any subject except items scheduled for public hearing. There are no public hearings tonight. You'll have 3 minutes, 36-minute total for this section of the meeting. And there's a sign-in sheet, but if you didn't sign in, I will look for show of hands and you could come up. We'll call on the people that signed in first. Mr. Clerk, who's signed in?
There is one person signed in, Bruce Jaffa.
Okay, Bruce.
Bruce Jaffa, outside city limits. Mayor, administration, council, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I have one topic to talk about tonight. It segues into some information item. The ad hoc heat loop group that you endorsed under PACAB will have a presence of a PhD with the National Renewable Energy Lab on in September. Where's my notes? I invite all of you to participate. I think Jason will be out of town, or Kat will be out of town. Jason will be there. It's kind of a indication of how significant this project is. You're talking about long time development. Earlier in the work session, you talked about how long it takes. This project was spudded in 2015 with the test well, with the then state money. So this is coming up on 10 years to develop this project, but it's gaining national recognition. It's a very exciting alternative energy program that will bring, I think, cost savings to the city of Seward, as well as the credentials for carbon efficiency and that sort of thing. One of the things that I try to do some research for, I'll be quick, I'll be coming to this meeting along with that project, and I just talked to Councilmember Calhoun about being conservative. I'm a conservative. I believe in conserving what we've got. I believe in private ownership. I believe in private enterprise. But one of the things that you can do to save is energy conservation. We built our houses better than the old log homes with air blowing through the logs. We chinked those, but not really well. This building leaks like a sieve. It's old. The former mayor of the borough, Charlie Pierce, talked a big game about retrofitting the borough building because it's inefficient. He didn't do it. I talked to Mayor Machicki about this 2 days ago. In the summer, the staff brings air conditioners. In the winter, the air blows through the windows. Mayor's been there, she can attest to that. This building is a perfect platform for an energy retrofit. There are programs available. It's not going to happen overnight, but just like everything else, it starts with wanting to do it. And I'm going to do it as an individual. I'm going to do it as a chair of PACAB or a member of PACAB as best I can. And I think it'll be, in the long run, if I've got another 10 years, maybe we'll get it done.
Thank you, Bruce. So no one else is signed in?
Correct.
Okay, anyone else wishing to have your 3 minutes at this time? Just raise your hand, you come on up. And you know the drill, but we need your name and inside or outside the city limits.
Nate Smith, outside city limits. Sorry, I just barely made it in time. 16-year-old with a new truck and teaching him how to change the starter. kind of here to talk about, because I know some of your stuff that you guys have on your agenda tonight has to do with planning and zoning and wording and what we were doing. I attended a few of those meetings and had in on the talks on it, just how we wanted to go forward with marijuana stores and on-site consumption. And some of the concerns and whatnot we were having was it's kind of like we put the cart before the horse when we came to this, because now we're looking at it, there are concerns, there's teenagers on that property, visiting the on-site where you have the little soup bar, you have children. We're not just talking about an intoxicant that you can hide with a fence and go, hey, the grown-ups are drinking on the other side. We nearly have something that is not contained by fence. So some of the stuff we were talking about that night was just that. Okay, so we do have a piece of property, we do have grown-ups doing grown-up things in there, but it doesn't stay contained. So going further along with it, how do we, make it responsible and what we do with that. So, there was a lot of concerns. We were talking about it and trying to work it and figure out how he can continue to do business and whether it should in the future be moved indoors or whatnot. But the problem we kept coming up with, there's nothing on the books. There's no coding. There's nothing that deals with any of this. And so with these questions, and when I left the one meeting, there was serious frustration amongst some of the citizens and some of the people we talked about it, or talked to about it, is it just felt like there was, who do you go to? Who do we talk to our concerns about certain things? Kids unfortunately do cut through there on their bikes, they do things. Should something like this be like, hey, if you're on this property, you gotta be 21 and over. We do have on-site consumption, it's outdoors, just simple things. So in that, when you're probably gonna see more of these things come across your desk as planning and zoning is working with what the public is coming in and saying. So I just wanted you to know that, hey, we are working with them and trying to figure out a plan. And so you're gonna, like what you see on your stuff tonight, but that's really all. I mean, it's getting worked out. But I think we can all agree that probably should have done this before we got here. The most progressive city in Anchorage voted down on-site smoking just for the fact is that the state made a no smoking ban around all of its employees. And we can all agree that's the most progressive town we have. And so they went to the public, they just didn't let the council make it. So thanks for your time.
Anyone else wishing to speak? This is your chance. There will be a 5-minute speaking time at the end, too. Okay. Seeing none, I'll close the citizen comments and move down to the approval of the agenda and the consent agenda, and I need a motion to approve and a second, please.
I'll move for the approval of tonight's agenda and consent agenda.
I'll second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Are there any changes that anyone wants to make? Seeing none, we're ready to vote. Mr. Clerk?
Voting on the approval of tonight's agenda and consent agenda, Osenga,
Yes.
Calhoun,
Yes.
Wells,
Yes.
Barnwell,
Yes.
Kreitz,
Yes.
Finch,
Yes.
and Mayor McClure.
Yes.
Okay, your agenda and consent agenda have been approved, and on the consent agenda was the August 12th, 2024 City Council meeting minutes and the introduction to ordinance 2024-013, amending Seward City Code 15.10.226, land uses allowed to standardize language and clarify where marijuana establishments are allowed in each zoning district.
Okay, thank you. Brings us down to proclamations and awards, and I have a proclamation. This is for Founder's Day, and this is something historical that happens every year. Whereas on August 28th, 1903, 83 men, women, and children arrived at Resurrection Bay on the steamer the Santa Ana And whereas aboard this steamer were two brothers, John and Frank Belain, who arrived on the Lowell homestead, and whereas the Belain brothers envisioned a railroad to the interior of Alaska with a coastal headquarters, and whereas the settlers cleared the town site, erected buildings, and began the construction of the Alaska Central Railroad, later to become the Alaska Railroad, and whereas John Belain bestowed upon the new town the name Seward in honor of William H. Seward, President Lincoln's Secretary of State, who negotiated the purchase of Alaska from Russia in 1867, and was later President Andrew Johnson's Secretary of State, and whereas the landing date of August 28, 1903 is remembered as Seward's Founder's Day. Now therefore I, Sue McClure, Mayor of the City of Seward, Alaska, do hereby proclaim Wednesday, August 28th, 2024 as Founder's Day, dated this 26th day of August 2024, signed by myself, and I'll keep this and take it to the Historical Society, being president of that. And let me speak to this just briefly. The Historical Society is holding a Founder's Day celebration like we do every year, from 4 to 7 this year in the museum and the atrium of the library, because there's going to be, they're setting up a Holocaust exhibit in the community room. But we'll have cake, cupcakes, coffee, water, a special guest group of musicians playing in the atrium, and I'll be doing old-timey music on the pump organ in the museum. And so we want to invite everyone to come. And here's the proclamation. Thank you. And that will be followed by the city manager's report, which you can find on page 5 of the packet.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You can see my report in the packet. Just a few things I'd like to highlight. The first is, after our council meeting last 2 weeks ago, I went straight to Kodiak the next day for the Alaska Municipal League Conference, and it was a really well-attended, wonderful conference. I was able to meet with many of Senator Murkowski's staff, as well as our representative Louise Stutz while there. And in talking to Senator Murkowski's staff, I highlighted some of the issues we were having with the previous rainstorm in the Lowell Creek Diversion Tunnel. And we also got to see her be presented with a piece of the hull from the Tustamina that was taken out in the Seward Smick JAG harbor, or JAG shop. So they cut out a piece of the Tustamina hull while they were redoing it and put it on a plaque and gave it to her, and it said forged in, or removed in Seward. So that was really cool to see, and a very cool plaque. One thing I would like to highlight is that to remind people that there's a spay and neuter clinic at the shelter on September 9th. So a really great opportunity if you need to spay or neuter either of any of your animals. And with that, I'll open to questions if there's any.
Okay, questions or comments for the city manager? I was all excited about thinking to go to AML in Kodiak, and because my brother lives there now, and turns out he was here, so I saved the city some money anyway by not going. We sent her. But no questions? There's some interesting pictures on page 8 of the packet. I understand at least one member of council went on the senior adventure social and perhaps went on the zip line, and I don't know if that's...
That is not Bob Barnwell.
That
We had the
isn't Bob
same
Barnwell?
discussion with administration
Are you
too.
sure that's not Barnwell?
We have an email chain where we also discuss this. It is most definitely Sam Young.
Oh, okay.
But there is
But
a
he did
Barnwell
do
in
it.
those photos.
Oh, okay, anyway. Apparently, that event that the Parks and Rec did, Sports and Rec, was really enjoyed by quite a few people, I've heard, so. I was sure that
Stop you,
was
right?
Bob. Okay, any questions, comments other than that? Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Bickling, did you have anything to add?
No comments, thank you.
Okay. City Clerk report on page 12. Mr. Clerk, what you got?
Yes, thank you. I'm happy to report that our student exchange group has finally made it home from Obihiro. The Typhoon Ampel caused them to be delayed there for an additional week. But as some of you know, the hospitality in Obihiro is just amazing, so they were well taken care of with their extra days there, and they got to visit a couple nearby cities, Kashiro and Sapporo. and I'm looking forward to hearing more about their trip, and we'll have a presentation
Okay.
all lined up for the next council meeting on the 9th.
Excellent. Glad they got back okay. That was pretty dicey for a while, yeah. Okay, no city attorney report tonight. So that brings us to other reports and announcements. We have a Chamber of Commerce report by Executive Director Sam Allen.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. It's nice to be here with you. I placed a laydown in front of you, which includes my report. We just wrapped up the 69th Annual Silver Salmon Derby. We had over 1,000 anglers come fishing with us. We brought in just under 6,000 pounds of silver this year. Jerry Martins brought home the first place prize with the silver of 14.33. Jerry was unable to make the award ceremony that we threw this year, but because his son was preaching in Hope, and I ended up running into him later that evening at the Derby booth and was able to get him his big giant check and his beautiful trophy from Obihiro. So it was great to get to hand that to him. Jerry last year was undergoing chemo during the Derby, and he came in second place last year, so it was really a great moment for the Derby and for Jerry and a lot of our anglers to see him take home the prize. We had some barbecues go on this year, so that bridged some local support and local feel for the Derby. The Silver Salmon Ball helped to raise additional funds for our Fish Restoration Fund, and that award ceremony really made prize distribution a lot more personal. So there was a lot of great successes for the Derby, and part of the reason I love it so much is because of its mission to help support fish restoration in Resurrection Bay. With that being said, there were some challenging fishing conditions this year, and shortly after the Derby, the AD Fish and Game reduced bag and possession limit in Resurrection Bay. You know, it's all over Alaska. Salmon populations are struggling, but that's part of the reason why the Salmon Derby is so unique and special, is that we have this ability to maintain our partnership with Cook Inlet Aquaculture Association to purchase smolt to put back into the Derby. So it's really a good cause, and we're renewing our efforts to support that fish restoration with like actual sponsorships and donations to be made towards our purchase of smolt versus just sponsoring the Derby. So there's some renewed efforts at that. So Derby's all wrapped up, and it kind of feels like summer is tapering off with that. Our visitor center is going back to our fall schedule, closed on the weekends and open 10 to 4. So moving out of our usual summer events, we're transitioning into Hometown Guide reprint this year and Visitor Guide. So I have a couple copies of those. I know Bob, you asked for one, so I have a copy of that Hometown Guide. We're just looking to update that so people have up-to-date knowledge on what it's like to live in Seward or what it's like to relocate here. Also, we are working on visitation tracking throughout the years, which I've included in that packet. Randy, you requested a look at this last year. This one is sort of focused on 4th of July and Mount Marathon through the last couple years. So we can look at 2019 through 2024. I left off 21 and 22 because those were kind of anomaly years. But what we're seeing post-COVID is a big jump, in 2023 and 24 leveling out, it's mirroring what a new business might do, and big spike and then a level out. And also we're noticing that in 2024 visitation days were down for that 4th of July festival week, and we're attributing that to, in part, new Apple privacy laws. People have to actually opt in and say, yes, you can track me. So that's part of the downtick is what we're seeing. But we can just see that steady trend in these numbers, and we're very lucky to have KPED now sponsoring this Datify, so that frees up some funding for us to put towards maybe utilizing their marketing abilities or elsewhere. And then on the back side of that page, we can just take a look at visitor days over the course of 4th of July Festival, but I was also able to pull June and July's numbers out, and we can see that in 2024 we did have a stronger June than in 2023, but that in July it goes back down a little bit. And just keep in mind when you're looking at these numbers that the festival dates do vary year to year, so when you're looking at July 2, July 3, July 4, those festival dates are different year over year. So this is just a little piece of the puzzle, and happy to continue to build on these visitation tracking subsets and understand them a little more. So that's that. That's a piece of our recent projects. We're renewing, or we're gearing back up for our winter and fall events for Chamber After Fives and winter weekends. That's all starting to pick up. We have one on September 5th, the summer recap, just to debrief with our community on how the summer went, how we can brainstorm for next year, gauge the climate a little bit, and just finally get to put everything down for a minute and chat. September 7th, we have a volunteer appreciation cruise with KFT. If anybody volunteered for any of our events, we'd like to say thank you and take you out for a boat ride. September 12th, we're working on Meet the Candidates with KBBI and the Peninsula Clarion. More details to follow on that one. And then looking ahead, I won't get lost in all the details, in October, Alaska Startup Week is now Alaska Entrepreneurship Week, which is a mouthful and very hard to spell. So you can see there, I listed out the 5 days of events and topics, which were, really considered and thought about based on what Kellyanne, what our Alaska SBDC office is seeing in her client hours, what questions are people asking. So those topics were based off of those conversations. So really looking forward to that week in October. And a couple of conventions down the line. So that's sort of where our focus has transitioned to. And finally, my last bit is the Seward Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors would like to request council to request of administration to have a work session. We have a decades-long partnership and a set marketing contract that touches on destination marketing, visitor services, and economic development. But what I'm keen on learning is council's hopes and dreams and guidance on what areas you want us to be focusing on when I come and present to you. What do you want to hear? Where do you want us to focus our compass and to rebuild that partnership and understand what it is council needs of us. So that's our ask of you, and that's my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Any questions?
I guess
Councilmember
this is a
Barlow?
simple question. I always thought July was there were more visitors in July and Seward than there were in June, but this shows the opposite. Is that-
This shows the opposite. Yeah.
But I thought schools got out June 15th and a lot of the outsiders would come post-June 15th. Is that trend changing?
I have just 2024 in front of me, but I can use this software to see how it has changed over the years in Seward and pull that out.
Traditionally, the busiest day in all of Seward every year is June 22nd. So peaks around then sometimes. Sorry to.
No, it's good.
It's always my little favorite fun fact from.
You've used this data a lot. So.
Councilmember Wells.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First, thank you so much for coming in, Sam, and I, as a business owner, want you to know how much I appreciate the Chamber, and I know that the Chamber does a lot for this community, and so thank you. And I'm also excited to say that as a data analysis type of person, that your numbers match my numbers. So yeah, actually June for each one of my businesses was way busier, so I'm excited to see the comparison.
And
Thank you.
our data tracks with Alaska SBDC's sales tax accrual, so we're able to, kind of confirm that although there is variance, it does follow the trend.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for saying that.
Anything else?
I have one small question. For the individual events from 2019, 22, 23, and 24, what's the rationale behind the differing date ranges? Because it's 8 days across the 4th of July holiday, but a variety of those 8 days. Can you just speak to that?
Sure, absolutely. We wanted to encompass the weekends because the 4th of July festival is always on different days. We wanted to make sure that we were not skewing the data set and pulling a weekend for one year and not for another year, because weekends are going to be busier whether it's the 4th of July or not.
Do you know if the fireworks are included or count on the 3rd or the 4th of those dates? Because those the two N ones don't include the third. I would wonder,
Okay, yeah.
that, and they're 1201, but just a,
1201. People are probably here by then. so-
yeah, probably.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
for the report. Okay, next we have presentation of the 2023 financial audit report by Altman Rogers and Company. And this is listed as a presentation. In the past, we've had a work session for an hour plus before this, and we didn't this year, so we're going to allow the presentation to go about a half hour. That's acceptable to council. Okay.
Perfect. Well, I'll be mindful of your time. Thank you, council members, and Madam Mayor, thanks for having me back again. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Grant Todd. I'm an audit partner with Altman Rogers and Company. We've done your financial statement compliance audit. I think this is our 6th or 7th year. As I always say, our firm works for the council. We're hired by the council. We report to the council. I'll go over our audit opinion shortly. It's our job to audit management. Management gives us the book of record at the start of the audit. Our job is to audit those records and give an opinion on their fair presentation, which again, we report to you. So our audit is split up into a couple actually audits. We audit your financial statements, and then we also perform a federal single audit, which is the smaller packet. Since you expended over $750,000 of federal funds, you're required to have a federal single audit. You were under the state single audit threshold of $750,000. I would note, and I'm going to cover first the Act for Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, the bigger of the two packets. Do want to point out that it is a special financial statement. You know, we audit a large number of governmental entities across the state, over 100 of them. We only have 2 clients currently that present an ACFR, which is just a set of financial statements, but a little more information goes into them, a transmittal letter in the statistical section, which is submitted to GFOA, the Government Finance Officers Association, and they're actually scored and reviewed and kind of given a pass-fail grade. And so this is, most years you've gotten it. There was a couple years when there was a transition of management where you didn't get the designation, but I have to report again that you guys did get an ACFR certification for this, for essentially last year's financial statements. You should get it again this year. So as part of our audit, there's a number of things we do. Kind of the first thing we do to kind of assess risk and look at the internal controls of the city is we select a random sample out of your population of cash disbursements, essentially AP transactions, outflows, so cash disbursements, payroll transactions. We also test internal controls over cash receipts, credit cards, utility billings, and harbor billing. So we take the entire population for each of those internal control structures, take a random sample of 40 transactions. Based on statistical sampling, if we test 40 transactions and find what we consider 0 errors, gives us about a 91 to 93% confidence that the internal control system as a whole is working. So once again, happy to report that throughout our testing, the only error that we found in that internal control sampling is related to utilities, which I don't say will come as a surprise. Every year that we've done this presentation, the utility system has had errors. I am happy to report that this year is the least amount of errors we've ever found, and that we only found 1 error, and it happened to be a continuing error related to a church. A church was set up as a residential entity as opposed to a church. So just a classification error. I do want to, again, even though it was finding and was listed as a finding, I do want to say, like I said, last year I think we reported 5 errors and it's down to 1. I know the city has spent a significant amount of money, hiring an outside consultant, and that seems to be helping. When we did this presentation last year, the downside is you hired the consultant midway through fiscal year 23. I'm sure I should have started by saying I'm reporting on the financial statements as of December 31st, 2023. So, we're 8 months after the fact, so I do apologize for that. But so the testing that we did was for January 1, 23 through 12/31, 23. So I think the consultant was hired mid-23. Some of the changes were put into place, but unfortunately, half the year had already taken place when that consultant was hired. So, but with the rest of our testing, cash disbursements, payroll, Credit cards, that's the outflow. The expense side of the profit and loss, we didn't find any errors in our testing there. The revenue transactions, testing cash receipts, utility billing and harbor billing, we didn't find any problems with that. We also tested what we call material transactions. When we give our opinion, we say the financial statements are materially correct. We set materiality based on current year activity, and that changes year to year. And so we look at all transactions over a certain threshold. In this case, it was all transactions over $150,000, just to make sure that they're coded correctly into your general ledger by fund, general fund, utility funds, things like that. Function, general government, and object codes, supplies, equipment, things like that. So have to report that there was no errors in that testing. And as I said earlier, we performed a federal single audit. We tested the coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds and had no errors in that testing. So in the financial statements, if you're following along, page 1, which is going to be the second tab under financial statements. Once again, there's 115 pages. I'm going to cover about 20 pages in here. So very quickly, the independent auditor's report. As I said, we've audited the financial statements of the city as of 12/31/2023. In the second paragraph, in our opinion, based on our audit and the report of other auditors, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the city. Layman's terms means you received an unmodified opinion, which means there was no modifications to our audit opinion, and that's the best opinion you can receive. Below that, the third paragraph, it says we did not audit the financial statements of Providence Seward Medical Center. KPMG audits Providence Seward, gives us the financial statements, and we consolidate those in with your healthcare enterprise fund. And so since it's such a large portion of that fund, we just say that we're relying on their audit. Back a couple pages on page 5. Another thing I failed to mention, if there's any questions as we're going through this, I know we're going through a lot of information quickly, by all means feel free to interrupt. Happy to answer any questions as I go, or at the end I'll open up the questions. So on page 5 is what's called the management discussion analysis. This is something that management, essentially Suley and her team, put together, and it's kind of a word overview of all of the financial statements. It's a required portion of the act for presentation. I would say if your constituents ever have questions about the financial data, I'd actually have them start here, because it kind of takes, the 100 pages that we're talking about, kind of sums it up in, 8 to 10 pages of kind of word data, and gives a quick overview of the financial statements as a whole. So I always like to point, people to the MD&A first, give some comparison data. Really the only comparative data in the financial statements is presented on pages 8 and 9, kind of a quick summary of the balance sheet and the statement of net position of the government as a whole. It's very helpful. Next, I'm going to jump up to page 17 and 18. These pages 17 and 18, statement of net position, essentially the balance sheet of the city as a whole. You guys report governmental activities, which includes the general fund, special revenue funds, and capital project funds would fall in the governmental activities. Business type activities would be all of your enterprise funds, harbor, electric, SHMIC, healthcare facilities, and then parking. And then your internal service funds would be in the business type activities. So page 17 is the assets and deferred outflows. So total assets and deferred outflows as of 12/31 were $283 million. 190 million of that is capital asset related, or capital assets. The remainder would be, assets cash of 51.5 million, accounts receivable of 22 million. Page 18 is liabilities, deferred inflows, and net position. Total net position at year end was 218 million. Of that, 57.2 million was unrestricted, with nearly 14 million in governmental activities is unrestricted, and 43.2 million is unrestricted for business type activities. For governmental activities, it was an increase of 2.7 million during the year, and for business type activities, an increase of $2.1 million. Page 19 is the statement of activities, which is essentially the profit and loss. And once again, this is citywide, and includes all your current activity and your long-term activity. So most important line here is third line up from the bottom, in the bottom right corner, change in net position. Again, governmental activities, an increase of $2.2 million. Business type activities, an increase of nearly $2 million. So definitely good from a, increase. Page 20, governmental funds balance sheet. So now we're in the governmental funds, and this focuses more on the short-term financial resources, essentially less than a year. The two financial statements we just covered are current and long-term. This will just be more on the current resources, looking at, essentially 1 year. Total assets, $20.2 million for the governmental funds. General fund is nearly $16 million of that, with $13 million being in cash. Third line up from the bottom, general fund shows an unassigned fund balance at year end of nearly $11 million. That's an increase of $2.2 million from the prior year and represents 7.6 months of reserves related to, essentially when compared to current year expenses in the general fund, which was 15.3. Code dictates, or code says 3 to 6 months of reserves, and so that has increased. It was right about 6 months last year, so that's a significant increase. And then your non-major, your other governmental funds have an unassigned deficit of $841,000. Most of that is related to, sorry, I didn't make a note of that, but I can find it really quick, is in the capital project funds. The animal shelter is running a deficit of $831,000. On page 22, so once again, unassigned fund balance across the whole government is $10.1 million, or in the governmental funds. Page 22, statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance, name for the profit loss. Third line up from the bottom, once again, change in fund balance increase of $2.2 million, attributed to a couple things. Total revenues in the general fund are up $1 million from the prior year. Expenditures were only up $400,000, and there was a reduction of $900,000 in transfers out. Most of that transfer, I think last year, was a big transfer to a couple different capital project funds. So combination of those things led to, like I said, an increase of 2.2. And your non-major funds, essentially the combination of all your special revenue funds and capital projects, an increase of $62,000. And the increase in the current year over last year was $1.95 million in your governmental funds. Jumping back to page 24 and 25, essentially the balance sheet for all of your enterprise funds. Your large or major funds are presented in 4 columns. The first 4 are electric, harbor, SHMIC, and healthcare facilities. There's 3 non-major funds, non-major enterprise funds that are combined in the non-major enterprise fund column. Total assets and deferred outflows for your enterprise funds, $202 million, which is just a small increase of $300,000 from the prior year. Jumping over to page 25, and I know this print is pretty small, I apologize, but third line up from the bottom, total net position, enterprise fund column, $151 million total net position. Unrestricted net position across all your enterprise funds was $40.1 million, which was an increase of $2.2 million from the prior year. Page 26, the profit and loss for your enterprise funds. Across all your enterprise funds, you had an increase of $1.95 million, which is a $5 million decrease from the prior year, attributed to a couple things. The harbor, as you can see, lost $483,000 this year. Last year, they had an increase of $4.2 million, so a change of 4.7 or a decrease of 4.7. But the biggest contribution is last year you guys received $3.8 million in capital contributions from the Fed, state, and KPB. So that was the biggest decrease. Is there was some COVID funding last year related to the harbor, and then healthcare facilities. Even though there was an increase of $4.2 million, it was a $1.7 million decrease from the prior year. And combination of that, which kind of is a $5 million decrease. But overall, net position increased by $2 million across your enterprise funds. After that is the statement of cash flows and the footnotes. I usually skip over those. Jump way back to the last page before, or a few pages before the additional supplementary information tab, which is page 68. Let's point that out real quick. Page 68 is the general fund. P&L, and it shows the original and final budget for the general fund, and then an actual column. So revenues came in $1.4 million over budget. Expenditures came in $1.3 million under budget. So essentially a variance you were predicting, your final budget was predicting a loss of 1.4 million, came in 1.3 over, so a variance of 2.7. And then after the additional supplementary information tab is actually another good schedule. It's the final budget versus actual for the general fund, and much more detailed information. It breaks it out by function, your different functions, general government, finance, public safety, public works, things like that, and it shows actual by object code. So gives a little more information. And then after that, starting on page 82, is the combining balance sheet for all of your special revenue funds and capital project funds. And then on page 84 is the P&L, profit and loss for your capital project funds and enterprise funds. So that's kind of my whole presentation. The smaller report, the compliance reports, as I said. In there is the CFA, which is page 6. It just shows a listing of all your federal funds you spent. You spent $1.1 million in federal funds. Page 8 is a quick summary of our 2 opinions, unmodified opinion on the financial statements, unmodified opinion on compliance. And page 9 lists a little bit more detail about the finding. As I said, utility billing was much better, which we like to see. Obviously, I know you guys would say we want 0 findings, but the hope is that in 2024 we can get there, since we have a full year of using a contractor for that. I was talking to Suli before. She said that the department is experiencing some turnover. We talked about that. So obviously, monitoring that and looking at the internal control. If you look at internal controls, so internal controls should be in place to catch. Ideally you don't want to make mistakes, but if you do make mistakes, there's a mechanism in place to go back and review and hopefully catch those mistakes. So with that, I know that was a ton of information, but with that I'll open up questions, comments, or concerns from the group.
Thank you. That was very
I know, sorry, that was quick.
quick.
It's great.
Yeah, okay, questions? Yes, Councilmember Wells.
Thank you. So, in response to your last comment regarding the cause that the city does not have adequate process and controls in place, that was in 2023. So my question for administration is, have we made an improvement towards this for the 2024?
Yeah, so currently we're actually in the process of reorganizing the structure of our utility billing department. Some recommendations that we've been receiving over the past decade or so is to separate out the 2 billing systems so that the electric department handles the electric billing and the rest of the billing for water, sewer, and trash payments when necessary are handled by the finance department still. So we're in the process of moving that billing structure along with the Utilisys and the consultants over to the electric department so that we can have some of those controls in place in the department with which they're appropriate. So the answer is we haven't finalized it yet, but we're almost there.
Wonderful, thank you.
Okay. Other questions, comments? Councilmember Barnwell.
I'm just on page 10, your general government programs, revenue and expense. Why is it harbor on there?
This is strictly for governmental funds.
The harbor's an enterprise fund.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so that would be the only reason why. And this, once again, is up to management. If there's something, if you want to see a graph like something like this, definitely something you can talk to Suli and we could add next year. Be easy to add.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, we've got our reading material here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry,
Councilmember Barnwell, sure.
I'm a little slower than you.
Hey, no problem. Hey. I do this all the time. So.
I'll take a couple years to figure this out. But on our electric side, we increased our rates this year, and this is as of the end of December of.
This is as of December 31st, 2023, and our rate increase was effective January 1st, 2024, so that would have no impact on this.
We're not going to be able to look at that at all. Yeah.
And that's the only downside of this is, like I said, we're 8 months out, unfortunately. So this information is 8 months from your end, you know.
Yeah, so just, maybe this goes to Kat, more than you, just like trying to get our head around where we're at with electrical
Yeah.
is really hard for my little brain. I can't, I think Council Member Calhoun's asked that over and over. Is just how do we get our heads around how much we have and how much more we have to spend? And is there at any point where we can reduce rates or look at that, or at least figure out what our trend will be in the next 5-10 years?
So on the September 9th agenda, we have a discussion item about that, and we'll have Brian Hickey and some reports from Sully and the Finance Department from there. And then in the next few weeks, we'll be sending out budget assumptions for the 25-26 fiscal year budgets. Like, we'll have some more answers and broader strokes about some of those decisions in the future about rates. But looking back at 2023 in this audit isn't conducive to those kind of questions. But looking forward as we go through this next budget cycle is when we can really dig into that.
Thanks.
Okay, any other questions? Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, and I appreciate you having me back. I do want to just commend Sully. Like I said, I think this is our 7th audit. I think during that time period, we've gone, the city's had 4 or 5 different finance directors. I think this is Sully's, first or second in the position. This is the smoothest the audit's gone. The findings have whittled their way down. I know the city has spent, considerable amount of money, with your utility contractor and with Carmen Jackson's team who helped Sully. Said this is the best the audit has gone. As Sully and her team become more familiar with the process, it kind of helps condense the time we spend on it. It kind of helps. So I do appreciate council spending the money for the contractors, and I do want to recognize Sully and her team for a smooth audit. This is the best it's gone yet. So, but once again, thank you for having me back. As I said, I work for you guys year round. I mean, you see me for an hour or 30 minutes a year. We talk to Sue or a council member usually during the audit process, or required during the audit process to meet with at least one member of the council. But if there's ever questions that come up, Sully knows she can get a hold of me. But if you guys ever have a question about any financial reporting matters.
We have another question.
I have one question. Since you stated it multiple times about us being 8 months, this being 8 months behind, if you will, and such positive comments on our current financial situation. So my question is it possible to speed this process up for 2024 or 2025, where we receive this documentation maybe 5 months out?
Great question, because I actually glossed over that and I forgot to bring it up. So the financial statements are dated July 31st. That was the day we issued them. In order to receive the ACFR certification, GFOA says it should be submitted to them within 6 months. There's, they give extensions, from time to time. They don't want you to be late every year. The biggest problem that we see, and I don't want, I hate in a public forum to throw anyone under the bus, and I don't mean to do that. Getting information from Providence is, and if you remember my conversation last year and probably the year before, and probably every other year, is tough. Right? Unfortunately, Providence is a huge corporation, and in the grand scheme of things, Seward does not very big. We reached out to the finance director here, and it's always, hey, let me run up the chain. And in order to get the information to convert their financials data, their financial statements, they're audited by KPMG, and combine them with yours, there's a bunch of eliminations that take place. You transfer money to them, they recognize it as revenue, we have to eliminate that. You give them essentially capital contribution, or you give them funds to buy equipment. When they buy equipment, it has to be recorded in your capital asset listing and taken out. And getting information from people in Seattle to help us with that is essentially very hard. And we had an exit meeting with them, because we went back and forth for 6 to 8 weeks trying to get information, and essentially we gave up because we weren't going to get it in your financial. You guys were essentially suffering. The issuance of the financial statements was suffering. We were frustrated. I think the financial team in Seattle was probably frustrated with us because they asked multiple times, why do we need this? Because once again, in the grand scheme of things, your hospital is not small, I guess, in the grand scheme of things. And so we, just asked if they could try doing better next year, and they said they'd try, but turnover happens, right? The people we dealt with last year are no longer there. You're seeing it here on a local level. So the hope is, yes, you know, we try to meet the 6:30 deadline for the aquifer certification. But some of that is waiting on other people.
Quick follow-up, please. Thank you, ma'am. So to administration, when we start looking at the upcoming contracts and things with Providence, is it possible to put in there a little bit more of a demand for financial returns, financial document submitting?
Yes.
Good, thank you.
Well, another hard part is in Providence itself, I'm sorry to take up too much time.
Yep.
Materiality is huge for them, and when we start talking, you know, at a smaller granular level, you know, ours is a lot smaller. So what might be inconsequential to them means a little bit more to us, and so trying to reconcile, I kind of laughed because we asked for some support for some capital asset data, and they said they couldn't provide it, which made me question, you know, how their auditors audited the numbers, but, so that just kind of made us chuckle at that.
Well, thank you.
So the hope is that, you know, it speeds up, but the same thing, having Sully here and having some, hopefully some stability at the local level at Providence should help that. So.
Okay. Councilmember Calhoun.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The capital assets thing sort of stimulated my thoughts a little bit. We had a work session a while ago on our motor pool fund, and the discussion came up about tracking the capital assets in that motor pool fund, and have we done that? And I don't remember the date. It may have been outside the window that you guys would have, but in the future, is that part of the information that you're going to have as far as capital assets? I guess this is more to the city manager. Have we updated our inventory in our motor pool so that we know that if we had a 1973 grader that nobody's using and it's sold, it's no longer there?
We have been chipping away at that very large project. So while it's not completed and we don't have a final project yet, we have been working on that when opportunity allows. I am hopeful that more opportunity will allow soon so that we can finalize that and get that ball moving so that it's a good thing to include in future audits as well.
Okay. Other questions?
And James has been hard.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you all, I appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Asking council, do we need a break before we get to our items, or we're good to go? Okay, we'll move on then to...
Thank you, Grant.
Pardon?
Oh, I said,
okay.
thank you, Grant. Sorry.
We'll move on to the new business. We have two resolutions tonight. The first resolution is Resolution 2024-043. Mr. Clerk, could you please read that for the record?
Resolution 2024-043, authorizing the city manager to purchase remote sensing software from Overstory for $50,000 for vegetation management in the city's power line right-of-way.
Okay, and you'll find this on page 38 of the packet. I need a motion to approve and a second, please.
I'll move for the approval of Resolution 2024-043.
I'll second.
It's been multiply seconded. And so, administration, you want to speak to this?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This resolution would authorize us to purchase a remote sensing software agreement for $50,000 to increase the safety, reliability, and efficiency of our infrastructure. We have Taylor Crocker, the ops supervisor of the electric department, here to speak to any specific questions you may have. But yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there questions? I'm sure there will be. You want to come on up and address a few questions? Did you want to start? Councilmember Wells.
Can you just explain what the software does?
Exactly. So, you know, as you're aware, in our industry, vegetation management is one of the most expensive line items on the bill. So what this software does is it takes a satellite scan of all the vegetation over our power lines, and it gets you a ground level, and then it creates a heat map of where we have the most critical encroachments. It even identifies the type of trees and our easement lines, so we can tell like where the worst areas are. And so then we'd go in basically, and it's called integrated vegetation management. It's kind of the new style of the right-of-way management, where you just hit the critical areas first, and then you work your way out to the less critical areas, trying to spend that money as wise as you can. But the other thing that comes with this, and you know, if it gets approved, we've also put this in our budget for years down the road. So every year you basically rescan And then it also, after 3 to 5 years, it tells you how fast the vegetation is growing in different zones. So coming to Seward, we're basically in a rainforest. And, there's areas that I'm sure everyone here has driven around and you're like, well, there's trees in the power lines and stuff. Some of those trees are 30-year growth. Some of those trees look like they're 30-year growth, but they're 5-year growth. And so we want to use this data to try to spend our money as wise as possible in the future, and to hit the most critical areas this next year and then start working out. The other thing to keep in mind is the easements that we've got right now haven't been fully cut. So on a lot of the transmission, we've got a 100-foot easement, but we've only cleared 60 feet. And where that comes into, a little bit of a concern is if this bill passes at the State House for the limited liability for utilities, then basically the requirement is that we've done our due diligence to fully clear our right-of-ways. And so if we had a tree that was in that easement, then even though other places might not be liable for it because they've cleared their whole easement, if we have any trees left, then we're still liable for those wildland fires and whatnot. And so it looks like there's a good chance that that's going to pass, but just kind of moving back, when you switch from 69 kV to 115 kV, you definitely need a little more room to work with the higher voltage. And we just have been looking at some of the numbers that we're getting from Chugach Electric for right-of-way clearing, and they're up there. And I think the more clearing that we can do with the money that we have in our budget, the better off we'll be budget-wise in the future.
Just have a quick follow-up, if I may. Thank you, Mayor. Is this $50K a year?
It is. Now, this is just for 1 year, so there's no commitment we're making past this year. When we were going through the budget, I added it to 25 and 26, so if that gets approved, we can continue to do it for 2 more years, and then we kind of get our growth rates. And not only can you see, where you've got vegetation in the lines, but then when our contractors and in-house personnel are out in the field and clearing, the software also lets them type on that span that they're working on and say that they've cleared that span. So it's like kind of work tracking as well as vegetation tracking.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Councilmember Barnwell.
So does Chugach, have they already assessed that, the region of Avalanche Acres where they've been doing all that work? I mean, do they have the software, and have they done portions of our transmission lines? I'm
not sure if Chugach has a LiDAR study in that area. I'm pretty sure they do, because they've got the entire rail belt tie line has a LiDAR study on it, but that's only one point of time when you do LiDAR. So this is like every year you get a new scan. So I reached out to 2 other vendors to see, because actually the LiDAR from the drones is the best imagery you're going to get. But just for our transmission from Dave's Creek to Spring Creek was $200,000 for the LiDAR. And so then I thought, well, maybe we'll check into some other stuff. So I found this overstory after the Paradise Fire at PG&E. There's some tech kids that thought, hey, there's something we can do, to prevent wildfires moving forward. And so this program came out of Silicon Valley, and they actually use a satellite to do the scan instead of go out and physically fly the drones.
Okay. So you're obviously working with your crew that's been doing some of the clearing. How do they feel about this? Are they pretty excited about this, or is that?
Yep. So, our crews typically do the clearing in the wintertime when they, can't set poles or do other work. So like right now, we are backed up probably into the first part of November with installing new services, these new neighborhoods, just taking care of trouble day to day. So where this is really going to save us, because the crew's still going to do their clearing throughout the winter months when they can't do anything else, but it's when we hire the contractors that come in. We want to get our best bang for the buck, with AK Tree Service, Carlos, whoever we hire to do that work.
Any other questions? This sounds like a really good deal to me. I mean, and there haven't been power outages because of trees falling on lines for quite some time. We must be. This is good.
Out to end August.
Yeah, this is good. Okay, are we, Councilman.
This is more for the administration, not for Taylor. Just looking at the certification of funds, it says that we budgeted this. Is that line item that it says where we budgeted for this? Is that an inclusive tree clearing line item?
That is
Or-
an inclusive contracted services line item.
Okay,
It's contracted services. So this legislation creates an expenditure in the amount, and we have budgeted funds for it under contracted services for 2023.
Okay, anything else? Ready to vote? Okay, thank you for coming up. We're ready to vote, Mr. Clerk.
Voting on the approval of Resolution 2024-043. Osenga,
Yes.
Calhoun,
yes.
Finch,
Yes.
Barnwell,
Yes.
Kreitz,
Yes.
Wells,
Yes.
and Mayor McClure.
Yes.
Okay, that resolution has been approved.
Okay, and we have one other item. It's a Resolution 2024-044. Mr. Clerk, could you please read that?
Resolution 2024-044, amending the City Council Rules of Procedure, Rule 16, to reflect changes made to the annual evaluations of appointed city officials.
Okay, and you'll find this on page 47 of the packet. I'd need a motion to approve in a second, please.
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2024-044.
One second.
Been moved and seconded. Administration, probably Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to toss this over to Mr. Clerk.
Okay.
Thank you, City Manager. So this resolution pertains to the annual evaluations of the appointed officials, which is City Manager, City Clerk, and City Attorney. And the two major changes in the resolution, one is the timing of the evaluations. Currently, it's set to be in January, February, or March of each year, and this resolution would change it to be roughly a year from our start date. So for the City Manager, it would be September. For me, it would be in May, one or the other council meeting in that month. And the other major change is to do away with the tabulation team and the anonymous comments, and instead you would bring your evaluations of us to the meeting, and you could use them for your own reference during the executive session.
And also, we collaborated a bit on this, but there's an NA column in the evaluation checklist too. So many of the categories weren't applicable to all three of the entities, and so we added that NA check.
Yes, the evaluation form itself has been
The form.
retooled a bit.
Okay, and those are really the big changes. I think personally, our clerk, who is always looking to make things better, came up with this, but we talked about it, and I think this is a big improvement, particularly in the timing of the evaluations. It makes sense to have it a year after the start date, because, so that would mean the next meeting would probably be the evaluation for the city manager.
Yes.
Correct. Okay, any questions, comments on this? Wow, okay. Ready to vote almost,
Sorry,
Mr.
Madam Mayor,
Calhoun.
just one quick, we talked about the city clerk and the city manager. The city attorney will fall into that same thing, so their annual evaluation will be in January, is that? or-
I can check with Sam and see when he officially took over from when Brooks retired. But, because he's the one who is evaluated, even though it's the firm that's...
So it would fall in that same,
It could also go to a year from their contract start date, since they are also a contracted firm that has a start and an end date, so we can do it from a year from the beginning of that
That's what I was
contract.
kind of wondering.
Yeah, which would probably be more appropriate than a year from Brooks's retirement, since they serve the city as a team rather than individuals.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what that start date is off the top of my head.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Ready to vote? Ready to vote, Mr. Clerk?
Voting on the approval of Resolution 2024-044. Wells,
Yes.
Kreitz,
Yes.
Barnwell,
Yes.
Calhoun,
Yes.
Finch,
Yes.
Osenga,
Yes.
and Mayor McClure.
Yes.
Okay, that resolution has been approved.
Okay, thank you. And that was all the business. So there's notice of our next council meeting, Monday, September 9th. And this brings us to citizen comments. There's no sign in for this. This is when you can have up to 5 minutes to speak on any topic. And all you gotta do is raise your hand and I'll call you up. And we've got one. Okay, come on, Bruce.
Bruce Jaffa, outside city limits. Another very productive meeting. Thank you for your efforts and participation. I would like to thank you for appointing Norm Regis and Jesse Groom to the Port and Commerce Advisory Board. With Norm's expertise and Jesse's enthusiasm, some of the experience we have on the board, we hope we can provide good advice to the council and work closely with the council. I look forward to a joint meeting we used to have a little more often with Council P&Z and the Heritage History Board. I would, for some reason, I didn't see on the schedule the September 3rd P&Z meeting for the new hotel, a new hotel potential. When I saw that today as an adjacent property owner, maybe I got a notice, but I saw the sign on the old restaurant across from Peking. I don't remember the name of it, but it's kind of a sign of a strong economy. If someone who owns property wants to build a 42-room hotel, there may be problems and may have to be discussed. There may be some concessions and agreements, but it's a sign of a strong economy for someone to invest something like that. And I think we all need to appreciate the position we're in. We've talked about this before. And looking forward to continued growth in Seward, which we want. You know, the housing has continued to be a problem. Now, whoever becomes the President of the United States has promised to help with housing. We need to be in a position that our regulations and our committees and our groups, P&Z leads this charge, council listens to them, does not have any impediment to that growth. There will be a variety of kinds of funding available, I'm quite sure, no matter what happens in November. This is a national problem. It's recognized at the highest levels, and it's good. Growth is good. And when we have problems, I guess many of you are familiar with problem solutions. It's not a matter of whining about it, it's finding a solution. And the solution to a growing economy is housing in Seward. Not everybody's going to have the fanciest house, starter houses. We've talked about that. Some of us lived in dry cabins for a long time. It wasn't so terrible. My wife said we won't go back to that, but it was necessary at the time. Other than that, I think that the electrical department is on firm ground. You all know that I support the city owning the electric utility. I do not understand whether this most recent acquisition, which I think is a good idea, I heard Dave's Creek to Spring Creek, which tends to suggest there's an overlap with Chugach. I have property along the main transmission line and underbuild, and we saw what Chugach did to catch up on clearing and passing some of the bill through to Seward, but after almost 7 outages last winter from mostly trees falling, not bad insulators anymore, mostly trees falling, enthusiastic for vegetation clearing. And if there's a way to apply technology to it so that the crews can most efficiently use their time, the $50,000 is money well spent.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Rhonda first and then. That's okay.
Hi, Rhonda Hubbard, 1800 Jessley Drive, inside city limits. I just wanted to let you know, and you're aware of this, we're working on, at P&Z, we're working on the comprehensive plan and been mulling through that, and just kind of a follow-up with the previous speaker. In addition to our housing issues, one of the things is energy costs, and I know we did have a utility rate increase last year, and if there's any way we can, that, and then as well as there's the public works. I hear there might be an increase coming there, but I would just ask the council to do whatever they can to mitigate any type of increases in the future, and if we could offset those in any way, because that is another hurdle for people living in Seward, and just trying to get employees along with the housing issue. So I just wanted to keep that in mind in our budgeting, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to come up?
Good evening, community and council members. My name is Jesse Groom. I live outside the city limits. I am president of ILWU Unit 60. As most of you know, the ILWU is the workforce for the cruise ships at the end of Port Avenue on the Alaska Railroad facility. But we also offload a number of other vessels and barges on the freight dock. The ILWU has had a presence in Seward working the docks for 80 plus years. We employ Seward residents as well. Our employers are longtime Alaska-based companies. On any given day, we employ over 100 people. The last couple of years, the Port of Seward has received numerous cargo vessels at the freight dock, discharging thousands of tons of pipe and fracking sand, heading to projects on the North Slope. From October 1st, 2023 to April 30th, 2024, the ILWU payroll was $1.3 million. A substantial portion of that was put directly into the community of Seward. We picked that specific timeline for payroll to help you understand the type of revenue the ILWU is bringing into the community without cruise ships vessels in the port. The vessels worked by the ILWU on the freight dock are in serious jeopardy of going elsewhere due to the inefficiencies of the Alaska Railroad. The ILWU and our employer became aware of a ship that was destined for the Port of Seward with pipe that has been redirected to Houston, Texas to be offloaded. Those cargoes will then be discharged and loaded out onto rail cars and trained across the country, and finally loaded onto a Matson ship to dock in Anchorage, all because the customer will get their cargo to their final destination faster than the vessel coming directly to the Port of Seward. This timeline for the vessel going through Texas will take approximately 5 months, and it is still quicker for the customer than bringing their cargoes to the Port of Seward and the Alaska Railroad transferring the cargoes from Seward to Fairbanks, which is the customer's preferred method. This is a direct result of the railroad's inefficient operations. As an example, we offloaded a vessel this past June, and as of August 1st, only 6 rail cars of cargo have made it to their destination. Due to the railroad's inadequate rail operations, more and more cargo vessels are looking to go elsewhere, which will result in the community of Seward losing work opportunity and revenue. Over the last couple of years, when the port has been at its busiest, the railroad repeatedly promises cargo customers rail cars to move their cargo, and then either does not or cannot provide them with any of the necessary equipment. Once they finally do bring rail cars down, the rail cars will sit in Seward for weeks and sometimes months on end, fully loaded with the customer's cargo. The ILWU has learned recently the Alaska Railroad has even gone as far as telling customers to take their vessels to other ports in Alaska. The railroad has the luxury to say these types of things because regardless of what Alaska port the vessel docks at, the railroad will still make a profit. The community of Seward is the only one that loses in this case. Working on the waterfront with the railroad for decades, we have been told by Alaska Railroad employees numerous times the railroad is not interested in moving cargo out of Seward. They only want to cater to the cruise ships and the passenger trains. We are aware that in 2018, a $20 million grant was awarded to expand the freight dock and that the city of Seward is partnered with the Alaska Railroad on this expansion. That is why we are here today voicing our concerns. ILWU Unit 60 Seward officers, members, families, and Alaska Longshore Division officers and members are prepared to be a part of a proactive solution to ensure the Port of Seward is fully operational cargo port it has been for over 80 years and into the next 80 plus years. I have so much more to say about the railroad and its facilities beyond the freight dock, but due to the time constraints, I can't fit it all in. I encourage every community member and council member to reach out to me with any questions. I will gladly make time for a conversation to expand further and in more detail on everything.
Good time.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Others wishing to speak? Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to council and administration comments and responses to citizen comments. Madam City Manager, I'll let you start.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to thank everybody for their citizen comments tonight and in the work session earlier today. I'd also like to give a big thank you to Grant and the audit team, as well as a huge shout out to the entire finance department, Suli, James, Carmen, Annette, John, Nancy, Carrie, and Sharka for all of their hard work over the audit season. And it's just rolling right into the next one with the budget, so it's been a busy time in the finance department. Other than that, I hope everybody has a wonderful Labor Day weekend. Thank you.
Mr. Bickling, do you have anything?
No, nothing further, thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Barnwell.
Congratulations to Suli and her team. It's great that they're doing such a good job with this. We're getting a good handle on the finances. I wanted to reply to Mr. Jaffa's comments on growth. I think it's really exciting that this town's growing and there's a lot going on. I just want to throw in there that I think we're at a point in our city's history or where we need to think not only growth but intelligent growth. So it's not just all growth at all costs. We need a community that's thriving in the winter. So we need a diverse economy and not just a summer economy. And I think that goes actually to the gentleman talking about the railroad and making sure the railroad does its due diligence to keep these guys employed in the winter, working a valuable part of our economy. So thanks for the testimony there. So,
okay. Councilmember Kretz.
Just want to say that it was a good meeting, and I am thankful for the people that spoke. It was information that I was not aware of, so thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Wells.
Thank you. So first, I want to make a comment regarding the work session. I am 100% for people being able to do what they can do on their properties as far as drilling wells and putting in septics. And I wish that we would have addressed that before we spent $100 and some plus $1,000 of our tax dollars on it. And to Mr. Groom, I want to say thank you so much for coming in. And if you haven't done so already, if you'd please email that letter. It sounds full of information in great detail. I'd like to review it and contact the railroad directly myself. Thank you.
Councilmember Finch?
Exactly what Councilmember Wells said about the septic tanks in the water. You know, we should be doing stuff to grow it. The one gentleman earlier that owned the property, like he said, try to live in sewer. There's so many people that have tried, and because of housing, they've had to move on. We need to make a big change to where that's accessible. Mr. Groom, thank you for that information on the railroad. I agree with Mr. Wells that we should be looking into that, because we should be supporting the year-round locals. That's the backbone of this community. Okay, so I fully support that. Everybody be safe on this weekend, driving. A lot of people out. Just please be safe. Take your time. We don't need any accidents. We've had plenty of accidents this past week and a half on the highway.
Thank you. Councilmember Calhoun?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I echo the others' comments, won't repeat them. I'm looking forward to budget work sessions that are coming. I think we have a lot of work to do. And I think some of our issues, it takes time. Government moves slowly sometimes. We can maybe pick the speed up a little bit, but I think we'll start to get some of these issues addressed. And I just look forward to that moving forward.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Osenga?
I just say, I was happy that we were able to get our audit report. Thank to Alden Rogers. Sam, thank you for your chamber report, and everyone please enjoy your Labor Day weekend.
Okay, well, I'll echo pretty much everything. Thank you for bringing that letter. I would like to have a copy of that sent. You could send it to the clerk and then, right, it'll come to us. My dad was a longshoreman. That's what he did from after World War II until 1964 earthquake. And so I'm I understand. I mean, the way we survived was longshoring. So it's a thing. I will reiterate that I want to invite everyone to Founder's Day. I know it sounds a little dorky to some, but it's your chance to go in the museum and see what's there and have some cake. And not in the museum, but in the hallway you get to eat cake. And also, the Holocaust exhibit is going to be quite a big deal. For those of us of Jewish heritage, it is a big deal, what happened. And so that'll be a very interesting exhibit. There will be an ongoing series of talks and things too, so keep your eyes open for that. And have a good Labor Day. Schools, I wanted to mention also, you should know, everyone knows school has started, and kids are, some of them are actually biking to school, so be extra vigilant, especially as it gets dark in the mornings when they go in now. I think they'll probably stop biking when it's dark, but you never know, so just be very cautious with the driving around, because there's still a few crazy drivers in Seward too. So anyway, thank you for a good meeting, good work session, and we've got other people remembering things, so let's start with the city manager.
I would like to just let the community know that on September 9th, we have our council meeting, but the KPBSD Board of Education will also be meeting in Seward. So if anybody would like to attend that, you can try and do both, be at both places at once, but that'll be at the high school.
Yeah, I got invited to, as usual, to have dinner with them before the meeting, but I can't because we have a work session, I believe. Well, it'll be part of it anyway, that I can't, so. Everything gets scheduled on top, that's how it goes. Councilmember Finch, you had something else?
Yes, I forgot to mention, thank you to all the seniors that reached out to me about the disabled fishing. I spoke with Christy Terry today about the coal terminal dock, and they're right in the middle of figuring things out, and she really liked that idea. So we might be having some dock fishing. If any of you haven't done it, it's actually quite fun.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have anything else? Going once, going twice? Okay, I will adjourn us at 8:24.